Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Now, I recently bumped into Audrey Salerno, who's a site analyst at cars.com, where she focuses on how data informs the customer experience for a brand. Now, if that doesn't sound too exciting, don't be fooled, because she's also known as a rock star and is on stage talking about innovative practices and strategies to get your digital assets singing, out-of-the-box thinking on data analysis to optimise your business results. Essentially, she's helping others by sharing real-world tips and tricks that address challenging analytic questions. Now, the session that she's in today at the Summit is for web and digital analysts of all industries. So I invite her to come on today and tell us all about it for any of you listening that would be interested and can't actually attend the show. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Vegas one final time to speak with Audrey from cars.com. Welcome to the show, Audrey. How's your Adobe Summit experience been so far? Any interesting stories or observations to share?
Well, I actually just got here, so I'm not going to be much help there. But I've been to summits in the past, and they're a really great, learning experience for new and old analysts alike. So I'm confident that there'll be a lot of good stuff coming up.
Excellent. Now, you're a site analyst at cars.com who is looking for new insights into visitor engagement. And you're also one of the winners of Adobe's nationwide Analytics Rock Star tour. I mean, can you tell me a bit more about that and how you got involved? It sounds incredibly cool.
Yeah, so I actually started out in web analytics straight out of college. I was a theoretical math major and kind of happened into analytics and thought it was a really cool way to, apply a lot of the things I'd learned from the theory into practice with real users. And from the beginning, I took it upon myself to learn as much as I could about how the tool really worked. From how to pull the data, but also how all the data was coming into it, how it was tracked. I mean, I really started out looking at the JavaScript code and reading it and understanding it because really there was nobody in the business who understood how all the data was coming in. There were issues with it and nobody could really answer. And so I really started from the ground up. And over time, I became the subject matter expert for Adobe Analytics at Cars. So I would work with the developers on tracking. I would work with fellow analysts at building, advanced analyses and dashboards. So one of the account managers came to me and told me about the Rock Star tour, and she's like, "You really need to apply for this." So I submitted my tips. I got picked to be one of the people who was going to be presenting, and then thankfully my peers liked my tips and voted me the winner in Chicago, and so here I am, and it's been a great experience, and it's made me want to find ways to share my tips more often, so hopefully I'll find a way to do that.
And are you known as a rock star in the office now?
Actually, it's really funny. My face is all over the office right now. Good luck in Vegas, all of these things. So I've become this office celebrity, which is really odd because I'm not a very, outspoken or loud person in that regard.
So for anyone listening, can you expand on your session that you're having on Thursday and what you're going to be speaking about here at the Summit?
So my tips and tricks are around analyzing the engagement of your new visitors. So my first tip is to basically take a cohort of your new visitors, give them time to engage with your site, and bucket them into groups by their visit level or visitor level engagement. So which of your visitors only have one visit and view only one page, like their whole life is basically a bounce. How many of your visitors are still only in one visit but have a handful of page views, and then how many of your visitors are your repeat visitors, right? The ones that you really want. And so once you identify kind of those different cohorts, you can see how well your site is retaining those new visitors. If you have a low percentage of new visitors who are repeat over a period of time, then that might be something that you want to have be a KPI, something you want to strive to improve. So then my second tip basically is how to use some of the custom date range functionality that Adobe has to trend that new visitor retention over time, because you have to make kind of a complex calculated metric, and you can't just throw month on there and trend it based on how the tool works. But because of these new calculated date ranges that they have, you can kind of make these little sandbox reports that lets you trend the visitor re-engagement over time.
Now, there is a lot of focus on data and artificial intelligence at the moment, but can you tell me how data informs the customer experience for a brand too? Because I think that's something we don't hear enough about.
So Cars.com has been using data to drive the customer experience for 20 years. And we use the data all across the business, but on the site analytics team, we use data to help inform all stages of product development. And that means from exploratory analyses that highlight opportunities to A/B tests to measuring your daily KPIs. So we really do it from end to end, from the discovery to the execution on the site. And then more recently, our data science team has been using data and machine learning to build data-driven products for users to interact with on the site, things like recommended vehicles and vehicle badging and things of that nature.
So do you have any examples of how you're analysing visitor participation using Adobe Analytics at Cars.com, and also help provide detailed insights into consumer behaviour that actually help listeners visualise how you can really make a difference and deliver tangible results?
So at Cars, when we first started analyzing visitor participation, we took a cohort of new visitors, like I was telling about with my tips, and we looked at their whole life cycle. We gave them a period of time to complete their car shopping process, and we kind of divided those into different groups based on where they came to our site, what pages they viewed, and we identified different groups of either very engaged visitors, and we also found that there were other pockets of not as engaged visitors. So we were able to kind of package up those insights about the lesser engaged visitors to give to the product organization to help them prioritize their efforts to increase engagement and grow their KPIs.
So if we do have any business owners or leaders listening to us today, where do they start when wanting to look into data and find those new ways to find actionable insights? I mean, are there any bad habits that people need to retire once and for all, and where should they be looking for that hidden value?
When starting off looking for actionable insights, make sure you really understand your visitor engagement as a whole. Make sure you understand the performance of different sections of your site, how different traffic sources, for example, would influence your user engagement, and see if there's any low-hanging fruit there.
Yeah.
And then you can start digging into trying to find those cohorts of highly engaged visitors I was talking about, and see if you can find things that they do that you could try and encourage your lesser engaged visitors to do. But as far as where to start, I think that kind of ties into your bad habits question a little bit, because the biggest thing you need to do is make sure that you're not asking for an analysis to confirm what you want to hear. Yeah. So come to your analyses with lots of hypotheses, but an open mind. Let the data and the analysis speak for itself. It may not tell the original story that you were hoping for, but it almost always has some sort of actionable insight that you can take out of it.
Cool. So am I right in saying that also involves spending time with developers to develop, debug, and implement advanced tracking solutions right across the site?
Yes, I do a lot of that actually. And as I was telling you a little bit before, that's how I think it's how I kind of got to the point where I am, where I really understand the data that's coming in. To be a successful analyst, I think you really do need to understand how you're getting the data. And, obviously not everybody's going to be sitting down with developers, but at least have an idea of how that's being done. As far as debugging is concerned, unfortunately, there's always bugs.
Yeah.
And so, do what you can with the debugging. Make sure you have good relationships with your developers. And then also kind of keep in the back of your mind ways that you might be able to, fix bugs when there are issues. For example, with Adobe Analytics, make sure you know how to use the processing rules and all those sorts of things. But I think the key, data quality is really important. So having good relationships with the people who are implementing the tracking is the first step.
Keeping developers happy is the most.
Make sure everybody's on the same page. Make sure, there's good documentation. The key to insightful analyses and having actionable outcomes is the data quality. If you don't have good data quality, you're going to be spending way more time trying to clean things up than if you're able to take the time to make sure it's tracked right in the first place.
I suppose there's going to be a lot of companies that are going to be struggling to secure that developer time. So are companies like Adobe making that process a little easier with out-the-box solutions, or are we still a long way off from that?
I don't consider Adobe Analytics to be an out-of-the-box solution, and I think that's a good thing, because Adobe Analytics allows for a truly customizable analytics experience for your business. You've got some restrictions in terms of the number of variables that you can use, but if you've got a developer who's willing to write you some really interesting JavaScript, you can pretty much put whatever data you want into Adobe Analytics. I mean, it's kind of a blank slate. There's some stuff that comes out of the box, but truly the value that comes out of it is if you have as much of that customization as you can.
So for anyone listening who would like to find out more information about anything that we've spoken about today, or would just like to contact yourself for a bit of advice or hear more of those tips and tricks, what's the best way to reach out to you guys?
If you want to reach out to me, message me on Twitter. My handle is Audrey Salerno. I'm not very active, but I'll definitely respond if people message me.
Cool. Well, I appreciate how busy you are, and you are preparing for your big talk tomorrow, so I wish you the best of luck for that. But more than anything, just thank you for taking the time to come and speak with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Have you noticed the theme to Adobe Summit this year? For me, I think a few years ago, a website was judged entirely about how it looked, and often that resulted in a classic case of style over substance. However, here in 2018, the success of an online store or a website is determined by how it works and if it delivers engaging experiences. Because if it doesn't, what do? We go somewhere else, because there are so many different websites, different content outlets that are all vying for our attention. And I do understand how using personalisation to give us more of what we want isn't for everyone. But if we can eradicate spam, irrelevant marketing messages and unnecessary inconveniences from our lives, is it a price worth paying? I suspect I have everyone listening to this. Some will say yes and some will say no. And that's the point, that maybe personalisation isn't for everyone. But we all demand a better experience from any service or any product that we buy. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one, how you think the best way forward is. As always, tweet me at Neil C. Hughes, email me techblogwriter@outlook.com, or drop by my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. But it's time for me to catch a plane back home from Vegas. I've had a fantastic time here. But believe you me, it's not as glamorous as it sounds. I haven't seen daylight in 3 or 4 days because I'm just inside a giant hotel covering the event and trying to speak to as many interesting people as I can for you guys. But hey, no complaints. I love what I do. This is the kind of thing that really excites me about how technology is evolving and changing almost everything that we know. The consumption of digital content continues to evolve across a plethora of devices now. I mean, one of the questions that I'd love to know the answer to too is, do we engage differently when we access the same content on a laptop, on a tablet, on a smartphone, or by asking Alexa? I mean, these are just a few challenges that marketers are trying to overcome at the minute. And voice search is now beginning to strip away branding completely. There are so many companies such as Adobe that are trying to find that secret sauce that will deliver the perfect slice of highly engaging content. I'm going to take a few days off and I'll return on Monday morning with another great guest for you guys back home in the UK. So a big thank you for joining me this week, and I hope you'll come and join me again next week. But until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.